Hello. All right. I got your attention. Great. Good afternoon to those of you who are here in person, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to those of you joining us virtually. And welcome to Summer Fuse, our third annual event. It's wonderful to be here still 3 years later. My name is Maria McWhirter, and I am Program Director of Connecting Communities Digital Initiative, or CCDI, which is one of 3 programs under the Libraries of the People initiative, which is funded in part by the Mellon Foundation. And now I'm going to try to impress you a little bit. In 3 years, CCDI has given around $1 million in financial support, as well as technical support to individuals, institutions, and organizations to reimagine, remix, and reuse the library's digital collections. CCDI has worked with 18 undergraduate and graduate students who had paid internships, which enabled them to create projects using the library's digital collections. CCDI has been advised by a stellar 9-member advisory board who advised us, supported us, and pushed us to do more. And all of this has been in service of showing you, those of you again who are here in the audience, and those of you out there in the ether, showing you that the library has a vast collection of digital materials and that it's well worth taking the time to do your own research in the library's primary research portal, which is loc.gov, to see what the library holds for you. And you might be surprised by what you find, and I'm always surprised by what I find when I go through loc.gov. I also encourage you to check out the Of the People website so that you can see the incredible work of our large cohort over the past 3 years. You can also see the work of our program collaborators in OTP, the Internships and Fellowships Program, and also the American Folklife Center. Our theme this year is Celebrating the Next. For my colleagues and I, we chose that theme because this grant was originally funded from January 2021 through December 2024 for a total of 4 years. However, we have been granted a no-cost extension through 2026, and during that time, CCDI in particular and Of the People as a whole will be assessing the program and also discussing what comes next. I must share that while we don't have plans to offer any new awards over the next 2 years, we will continue to have junior fellows and AHA interns. So I encourage you to do a browser search for internships at the Library of Congress to learn about the next internship rounds. We also encourage you to subscribe to the Of the People blog to get the latest updates. We're very excited about this afternoon. We have over 4 hours of incredible panelists, discussions, visuals, and more. We will get to hear directly from our newest artists, scholars, and residents, Maya Freelon and Dr. Allie Martin, who will be introduced by our inaugural scholar in residence, Maya Cade. You will also hear from our current higher education and libraries, archives, and museums awardees. They will be followed by a panel on community engaged AI with Curry Hackett and Tahir Hemphill. And we close strong with our we close strong with one past intern, Ide Thompson, and 2 current interns, Janiyah Peters and Jonathan Walton. This event is being recorded, so if you don't have, for whatever reason, 4 hours to spend with us today virtually, you can check back soon on the loc.gov website for the full recording. And now I have the pleasure of introducing John Rutledge, who is the Deputy CIO at the library. John serves as a senior advisor to Judith Conklin, the CIO, and Dr. Hayden, the Library of Congress, on all technology matters. John directs and manages the day-to-day operations of the library's Office of the CIO, and in partnership with the CIO, is responsible for providing the vision and leadership necessary to ensure that the library's IT services are aligned with the strategic mission and empower the success of the agency. Let's welcome John Rutledge to the stage.
So, good afternoon. As Maria said, my name is John Rutledge, and I'm the Deputy Chief Information Officer for the library, and I'm excited to be here for the second year in a row. On behalf of myself and the library's Chief Information Officer, Judith Conklin, I would like to welcome everyone joining this year's CCDI Summer Fuse, both virtually and in person in this beautiful room. And if you find yourself looking around the room, it's expected. It's quite a beautiful room to be in. There's a saying amongst library staff that you're considered, and excuse the air quotes, new if you've been here for less than 10 years. I've only been here for 9 years. So it's a bit of a joke, but when you consider the institution itself has been around for over 200 years, it kind of makes sense, right? And given the depth and breadth of collections here at the library, there's so much to learn. It takes time to get to learn the library. So as a matter of fact, even though I'm still new, I work with some amazing and dedicated colleagues who've been working at the library for 30, 40, 50 years. I have somebody on my team that's been working for the library for 56 years. So that's the reaction I get every single time I share that. I've never been anywhere where somebody has been in a job for over 50 years. It's an amazing thing. As our teams in the Office of the Chief Information Officer, or what we call OCIO, advance the library's mission with technology, the experience and longevity of our colleagues is an invaluable asset. As an institution as enduring and deep-rooted as our own, there is something to be said for what's new. With CCDI, the library has been collaborating in new ways with communities around the country, building new relationships and finding innovative ways to experiment with and learn from our digital collections. Through CCDI support, residents of Covington, Kentucky, for example, had the opportunity to attend intergenerational events about life in their historically Black neighborhood. Houston Community College students created music, short films, and art about the prison system in the American South. And the Long Island Shinnecock community is furthering their oral traditions as an interactive exhibit currently running at the Guild Hall of East Hampton. All of these projects, including the ones you'll hear about today, are possible not only because of the passion of our awardees and staff, but because of the library's commitment to using technology to connect and engage all Americans. Since Of the People was announced, the CIO and I have been very excited CCDI was part of OCIO because we are all engaged in empowering the library and our users through technology. CCDI provides another way to use technology to highlight our human stories, to showcase the connections between technology and users. We're thrilled to support CCDI awardees to produce projects that use emerging technologies to help throw open the library's treasure chest in such innovative ways. I am very proud to serve as the Deputy CIO in an era when the library is reimagining engagement and experimentation with the digital collections. And I'm especially proud of what CCDI has been able to accomplish, and with the support of our awardees in accomplishing over the past few years. I'm confident we'll all learn something new during this year's Summer Fuse, and I thank you all for participating. So now I'm honored to introduce the 14th Librarian of Congress, Dr. Carla Hayden. Since 2016, Dr. Hayden has led the way as we have redefined and modernized the library's mission to engage, inspire, and inform Congress and the American people with a universal, enduring source of knowledge and creativity. Dr. Hayden launched the Of the People initiative in 2021 with the support of a $15 million grant from the Mellon Foundation. It has become one of her signature initiatives. Please join me in welcoming to our stage the Librarian of Congress, Dr. Carla Hayden.
Thank you, John. And I want to start by thanking Maria for shepherding this project, for putting structure into place where there was none, for imagining what it could be, and now here we are. So thank you, Maria. And you all can clap. Also a shout out to the advisory committee you've helped guide us and give recommendations, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow when we're going to meet and I'm going to hear and get a sneak preview of a report that I really begged you to do, to give the Library of Congress some direction, recommendations on how we can make sure that this program is embedded and integrated into the Library of Congress going forward. So thank you for taking that time, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow. So it is wonderful to be here, and I am pretty excited because this is the 3rd annual Summer Fuse event where we get to celebrate the remixing and the reusing of the library's digital collections, where we get to hear directly from the awardees about how they are using the collections, and also where we get to encourage everyone in the ether, everyone, all ages, to explore the library's digital collections at loc.gov. And in the afternoon, you're going to hear some more about those collections, as Maria said, and John, that are rich and full of surprises. And while you're here, I hope you get a chance to visit the new permanent treasures gallery that the library opened last week that has some of those treasures on display and will be the focal point for the physical objects being displayed. When I met with Dr. Elizabeth Alexander, the president of the Mellon Foundation in 2020, we discussed what would become what we now know as Of the People Widening the Path. And part of it was her support for our commitment to making sure that the general public knew about and had more ways to interface with the library. And over the past 3 years, it's happened. CCDI has been doing an outstanding job of introducing more people to the library's digital collections, and you'll hear more about it today. The current junior fellows, who you'll also hear from, are really giving us the insight of a new and future generation of what they can do with the richest collection, we like to say, in the world. So I'm happy to get the program officially started by introducing Maya Cade. She was our inaugural scholar in residence and the founder and creator of the Black Film Archive. And through her residency project, and I have this in quotes, Tenderness in Black Film. And if you haven't had a chance to hear her present or get into that, just know it is one of the best explorations of the library's collection, because she began searching for and finding moments of tenderness in the library's vast film collection, the largest in the world. Maya will introduce our newest artists and scholars in residence, and I just want to personally welcome her to the stage because she has been, as we like to say, a rock star in this. She's presented all over, and we just can't thank you enough for being the embodiment of what this project and what this program could do. So Maya, take it away.
Well, how do you follow that? I will find out. Once again, I'm Maya Cade. I'm the inaugural scholar in residence at the Library of Congress for CCDI. I have the extreme honor of introducing Maya Freelon and her interlocutor, Murtis Bedolla. Maya Freelon is an award-winning visual artist whose work was described by the late poet Maya Angelou as visualizing the truth about the vulnerability and power of the human being. Her artwork was featured on the cover of Walter Magazine, Garden and Gun Magazine, and Lux Interiors and Design. Cosmopolitan Magazine once called her one of the most badass female artists in the biz. And Miami New Times selected her as one of the 5 young artists to watch during Miami Art Week. She completed commissions for Google, Cadillac, and the NC Museum of Art, and her monumental sculptures have been exhibited around the world, including the Smithsonian Arts and Industries Building and the U.S. Embassy of Madagascar. Please welcome Maya to the stage.
That was a good intro.
Oh, thank you. I also have the pleasure of introducing Murtis Badola. Murtis Badola is both a proprietor and the visionary founder of Gallery Murtis, an emerging blue-chip gallery specializing in work created by African American and African diaspora artists. Badola's career spans over 3 decades as gallerist, art advisor, and curator. In 2023, Badola's curatorial work and scholarly contributions earned her an honorary doctorate in fine art from the Maryland Institute of College of Art. She also received a governor's citation from Governor Westmore, underscoring her profound influence in the art and cultural realm and establishing her as a distinguished curator and scholar. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from the University of Maryland. University College received her curatorial training at the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore, Maryland, and earned online certificates in cultural theory for curators and curatorial procedures from the Node Center of Curatorial Studies, Berlin, Germany. Professional memberships include AAAM, Art Table, and IFPDA. Please welcome Badola. Murtis Badola.
Thank you, Maya. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Murtis Badola, the founding director of Gallery Murtis, and I feel very privileged to be here in conversation with Maya Freelon, who I've known for a number of years. So, Maya, thank you for providing the opportunity and the invitation to be in conversation with you today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I just want to take a second to thank Maria, Olivia, Kimber, and the amazing staff at CCDI. They've just been so encouraging. And also shout out to everybody named Maya. I think we heard that name like 20 times. Maya Thompson, Maya K, Maya Freelon. Yes. In school, I never had that. It was never Maya A, Maya F, you know, it was just Maya. So I am so happy to be here. And also my former awardee who's coming up next, Allie Martin, just to be around these people who are just so encouraging. Thank you.
Yeah, this is wonderful. Well, we have lots to celebrate today.
Yes.
As artist and scholar in residence, and also happy birthday to you.
Thank you. They made me work on my birthday, y'all. That's okay, because the person who loved my birthday the most is my dad. He was the architect of record for the National Museum of African American History and Culture. So I wanted to just take a moment to remember him, the sacrifices, and he passed away from ALS, which over 8,000 people are diagnosed a year in the United States. So there was a ceremony a few weeks ago that I came out to called I Am ALS. And this, they put a flag for every person that is diagnosed in the United States. So that's something that I want to use my art to spread that awareness as well. And also, it's the neighbor of the Jefferson Building. So
Yes.
I'm excited.
And thank you. Yes, both of your parents are really profound individuals, and for us who are aware of the wonderful legacy that your father left behind, we thank him for that. So let's talk about your project. Begin by sharing the title of it and your vision for it.
I thought you were going to say the whole title.
All right,
It's kind of long.
I will. So I'll do that. I'll be honored to. So it's a little bit of a tongue twister, but I love it. It's Whippersnappers, Recapturing, Reviewing, and Reimagining the Lives of Enslaved Children in the United States.
Yes. I guess I wanted you to say that because I thought about making a short title. And I know librarians, they always have like, okay, you got to do it this and don't go over this and blah. So one, we could have just stopped at Whippersnappers. That's interesting. You might want to look at that. What is it? But then I wanted to think about the history of the United States. Some of the atrocities that happened to the children, the first African Americans, which are the children who are born here. And I wanted for everybody to read it, to remember the history, the legacy, and say it out loud. So I made it as short as possible, which is this. Recapturing images, reviewing, and reimagining. And so I brought some of that, and we'll see some images as well in a few minutes.
Okay. So please share the role photography has played in your art making and telling the story of your family's history and the African American experience.
Okay. I don't have time because I think we don't have that much time
Right,
for the
yeah.
whole history, but I'll do a quick abbreviated
Please.
version. My great-grandfather, Allen Freelon Sr., was a pioneer African-American artist, photographer, printmaker, and educator. He grew up in Philadelphia as well as my dad, and they were both photographers. So I've always been interested in archival photos and images of Black people. And that's something that I started working with over 15 years ago, images in my work. And then I went all abstract on you, and I let go of the image for a little bit. But when this grant I got sent 3 times, and when things happen in threes, I listen on the 3rd time, usually, right, Jess? Sometimes. So when it came by the 3rd time and someone said, you really need to apply for this, I was like, oh, but they're gonna make me stay at the library, and I got kids, and I'm at home, and that's in North Carolina, and that's in DC. So I said, okay, let me apply. We'll see what happens. And the moment that it was announced that I got it, I was just so overwhelmed because I knew the work was important and it needed to be done. I immediately thought, okay, the figure, let's bring that back. Let's look at the history. Let's weave that in. And tapping into the archives was a journey, and there's so much there. Like somebody said earlier, it's a treasure chest. There's more than you can even see. So coming and working for a week, 10 days, spending time with the archivists and the librarians was just a transformational experience, and it really shifted from the original idea. I don't know why we had to write out the whole thing beforehand. How could you know what you're gonna do? Once I got there, I realized, okay, some important questions. One, where's the joy? I thought there was gonna be a lot more in the subject matter that I chose. I don't know why I thought that, but it surprised me. That was one challenge that came up. And then I had to expand my research parameters to find that. So I think we're gonna get into that in a minute.
Yes. Before we delve into the images, I want to ask one specific question to put what you did into context, and that being your process, and ask you to discuss the significance of explicitly defining the subjects of this body of work as enslaved children, rather than using more general terms, and how does this framing contribute to a deeper understanding of their experiences and legacy in American history?
That was such a deep question, Mertice. Thank you for asking. Of course, enslaved takes the ownership and the shame away from the person who was oppressed. So I believe that terminology is really important to remember to say that. And also, I was really thinking about that age when you're innocent and you don't know and you're just here, you're a child. It's between, when you're still forming who you are, between 0 and 5, where you wouldn't be working, but you're existing in an environment. I wanted to think about what those children were thinking about, what they were doing day to day, and what they would feel like if somebody came up and said, let me take this picture of you. Is it a picture that is for inventory? Is it a picture that's to just show stuff that I have, or things or objects? You know, if you're told to be, sit still even as any kind of child, you're gonna wonder why. And I think once I started to look at the images, I really felt connected to the ancestry and the lineage and how that was disjointed. And I hope that my project helps to bring some healing there.
So let's look at the first image here that's on the screen. Can you talk about this one for us?
Oh, yes. So this is, like I said, I had to expand out of my original parameters. Initially, I was looking for joy in pictures of any type, any glimpse, any tiny bit of joy. And I love what Maya Cade was saying, tenderness. We're looking for these things to reimagine them. And I did not find joy. I had an amazing librarian help me, Miss Smiley, and I asked her to help me find some joy. It was hard. It was hard to look at. I didn't realize how much the images and experience would be so draining and heavy emotionally for me. So every day I had to just kind of decompress. So then she suggested look at the W.E.B. Du Bois collection, which I found this amazing image. The first thing I thought was, that looks just like my nephew. I found him and I immediately texted my brother, hey, I found Justice in the archives at the Library of Congress, and I'll show you a picture of him really quickly. There's this interesting thing that African Americans do because we've been pulled from our history and our understanding, and we don't know exactly where we fit. Sometimes when we look at images, we see ourselves. We try and reimagine a history. And I wanted to take these images and along with, so part of my grant also involves taking contemporary images. And then this one was a contemporary image of my nephew, Justice, and this image from the W.E.B. Du Bois collection is just called Young Man. And them to have this conversation, to pull them together, to realize that we are coming from these people, even if we don't exactly know the history and why. And so the visuals, to me, the kind of colorful aspects are the ethos there, kind of moving through that.
Yes, so part of what you aim to do is to draw from the archival photographs and juxtapose those images to your photographs that you'll be creating.
Correct. And one great thing about the Library of Congress is these images are available to anybody with an internet connection, right? They are available high resolution. You can download them. A lot of them are in the public domain. And so there are other artists who might want to comb through and pick their particular thing. One suggestion I have is you might think you know what you want to do, but you aren't going to know until you get there. And having a team of folks who are familiar with certain areas really helps streamline the research. So if I would never have known to look into the W.E.B. Du Bois collection, I would have been sad and crying at the other ones the whole time. The Lomax collection is what I started with. And so that's also a way that a project can grow.
Yes, and you are also striving to create an interactive component to the exhibition. Could you talk about that, please?
Correct, yeah. I'm gonna do several public talkbacks to hear from the community of what they're interested in. I'm connecting with Stagville Historic Society in North Carolina, which is an old plantation site, to do some live programming there as well. And I wanted to focus on one of these images that just came up, the Young Africa image. Now, because I couldn't find joy doesn't mean that I didn't find some amazing things in the Lomax collection. I did. And since I let go of that happiness, I think I went into, okay, how about wonder? That's an okay thing, or even just indifferent. I definitely didn't want to choose any images that were degrading. There's a lot of racist imagery in there. There's a lot of postcards. Like, for example, this one says Young Africa or the Bone of Contention. But look at the baby. So cute. What was that child thinking? Where is that child's ancestors now? I want to allow the creative process to help bring that out, and that's what I've been working on.
So I think part of what the consideration is in terms of the maker, the person that took the photographs that are now part of the archives, what they were aiming to do, what sparked that. As you stated previously, was it to document their property? So we talked about these images being birthed from or the origin of them in terms of the maker. Primarily, as we speculate, through a white male lens. And then now you, as a Black woman, offering a counter narrative to that, and how important that is to you in order to do that, be able to do that.
Yeah, it's the ability to take back, to use an image, and remixing is what Black people do. You know, we come, we say, oh, that's interesting, let me change it. It's been documented since we've been here. You like shrimp, you like grits, we're gonna make some shrimp and grits. You know, I saw fatback on the menu for like, I don't know, $25, and that's like the cheapest meat. Like, I'm just find it interesting how innovative we are. I come from a family of innovators. My grandmother and her sister were quilt makers. They were part of the great Black migration up north for more opportunities. And they said, you better learn how to make a way out of no way. And we know how to make something out of nothing. So that is in my DNA. I think allowing ourselves to enter the archives and transform them, or at least be informed by them and do something new with them, we need to close that digital gap. And that's why CCDI is so important, to let everybody know that they have access to this. And we know the story is only told by the victor, so we need to tap in.
Yes. Would you like to speak to the next image that's on the screen here?
Yeah, so as you saw earlier, not the bone of contention anymore. This beautiful baby is existing in this other world, floating, reimagined, recaptured, and I also am working on a contemporary image with a curly-headed baby that looks very similar. And can I get that baby to open their mouth just a little bit? I think so. But you'll see, you gotta tune in. When's the grant over again? Where'd she go? Maria, she tried to leave. November, I think. They're really pushing it through. I don't know who else has to do a whole exhibition in 1 year. Actually, I guess I signed up for that, right? When I submitted the application, that was approved. But no, I'm excited to share this work and when I'm creating, I really let the work speak to me. And I just really feel like a conduit, honestly.
Yes, wonderful. Is there another image you'd like to share?
Let's see. Okay, so this is another image. These are actually way smaller than the originals. Like I said, you can download at full resolution, so you get images that you can really work with and also print. So I'm printing on photo paper, I'm creating on photo paper, and I actually brought an example here today because my wonderful and amazing partner, Jess, she said, why don't you try printing on tissue paper? And I said, that's why I love you. But getting this kind of ephemeral, beautiful quality, it just changes that dynamic even more. But I brought the examples because it's a little bit hard to see visually without seeing in person.
And how many artworks are you hoping to produce for this?
Between 10 and 15. Like I said, I'm connected with the Stagville Plantation, which is one of the largest plantations in North Carolina that's now a historic site, and they've agreed to present the final images, which is going to be a great collaboration as well, because they really put the whole legacy of slavery into the context of the people who were used and tortured.
And so what are some of the takeaways that you want people to think about? What do you want us to contemplate from this experience?
I think if I couldn't find joy in the archives exactly, I hope that these reimagined images remind us that that joy and innocence is still there, even if the child is looking just innocently or blankly, that they had an energy around them and that they were just like any other child. Mm-hmm. And to remember them means that they live and that they're honored and appreciated and respected. And that if that is translated through my art, then I feel like I did what I came to do.
Wonderful. Do we have time for questions now?
Hi. I want to kick it off with a question because I'm sitting here writing down notes. And, you know, I think so much when we reimagine and rework through archives, there has to be principles of care that we invoke. So I wonder if you could just give us some of your principles of care as you're navigating these archives.
Great question. I do remember my mom saying, "Do you have your crystals and are you wearing all white when you go to the archives?" And I didn't even think about that. I would say normally if I thought I was gonna need something, then I would. But I just thought I was gonna go in. I thought I knew what images I was gonna use, and I don't know if the other awardees thought they were going somewhere and took a left turn. Being open to that is great, but I remember feeling so overwhelmed when I left. Partly because I was there by myself, and libraries can be kind of cold and dark sometimes. And I'm like used to being out, but also looking at these with other researchers, looking at different stuff, and I'm looking at real heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm by myself, and I'm in an environment that's mostly white, and I'm feeling like I just need to see Maria real quick. Where is she? But it was great to be greeted at the beginning and just say like, okay, when you leave, you know you're gonna be doing great work. So do it for the kids. So that's what keeps me going.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to open it up to the audience if we have time for one question. So if anyone has a question, I can keep going if we need to. Do we have any digital questions? Okay, I will keep going in honor, really. And so, you know, because in my work, I was gleaning tenderness from the archive, and you're gleaning joy. How do you quantify joy without reducing? And I know you touched on this, but I would love to surface back, because I think it's an important question as well.
I think even searching for joy might have been not the right start, because I knew who was taking the pictures and what they were of sometimes, and some of it was an assumption. But then imagery is so powerful sometimes, you can infer things. And as I was like digging around and looking for it, I might have seen joy, but it looked kind of fake or staged. I might have seen joy, but the child, there might be a white child with their arm around a black child, kind of using them like a doll, and they don't even know. So I think I wasn't trying to reduce it to something simple, but I was really looking for what moved me from my perspective, because I knew at least if I had neutral, once I started working with it, we could get there. For example, this image, one of the children looks kind of scared and hiding back there, but there's just this beautiful innocence. And so all of the work that I shared today is still in progress. It's not finalized or finished, but I did want to give everybody a little preview. But yeah, that's really the context in which I was looking for joy.
But also the reimagination can be joy within itself.
Exactly.
To glean perhaps not a life upon the subject, but to know that they are valuable in our present, and that can be joyful.
Exactly. And then when people see them and they have joy, then we're sharing that experience.
Yes.
And even though you don't know who this is, we can still circulate that energy together and collectively. And then remember the countless others that were not taken, that didn't make it, that were not a part of the documentation.
Yes, I think that's quite beautiful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And thanks, Mertice.
Thank you.
Oh, there's a cute baby. That's the end. All right.
Well, now I have the honor of introducing the Dr. Allie Martin. Dr. Allie Martin is an ethnomusicologist and artist from Prince George's County, Maryland. She is currently an assistant professor at Dartmouth College in the music department and the Cluster for Digital Humanities and Social Engagement. Her work is attuned to the questions of race, sound, and power. Her forthcoming book, first book, Intersectional Listening, Gentrification and Black Sonic Life in Washington, D.C., explores the relationships between race, sound, and gentrification in the nation's capital. Her work has been supported by the Ford Foundation, the Smithsonian Institution, the Society for American Music, and the American Musicological Society. Martin is the director of the Black Sound Lab at Dartmouth College, a research environment dedicated to amplifying Black life and decriminalizing Black sound through digital practice. And she will be, she will be in conversation with Dr. Samir Magheli. Dr. Samir Magheli is an award-winning curator, historian, writer, and educator. He serves as senior curator at the Smithsonian Institution's Anacostia Community Museum in Washington, D.C. He's also a visiting scholar in residence at American University's Metropolitan Policy Center. Dr. Magheli has 2 decades of experience in the fields of public history and public humanities. His research, teaching, and curatorial work have spanned a wide range of fields and topics, including U.S. social movements, African American and African diasporic history, urban history, and cultural history. Prior to joining the Smithsonian, he was professor of African American Studies at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, as well as a visiting scholar at Northeastern University and the Paris Institute of Political Science. Please welcome him to the stage.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Thank you all for having us, and thank you, Dr. Martin, for having me as your interlocutor. I have to say that it's particularly special because I first met Dr. Martin, or Allie, when I hosted her as an intern with me at the Smithsonian Anacostia Community Museum, and then again served as her advisor during a pre-doctoral fellowship when she was working on her dissertation at Indiana University. And so it's particularly special to be here. It's a full circle moment to hear about the wonderful work you've been doing here at the Library of Congress. I would love to just start with hearing from you about what inspired your interest in the particular collections you're working with here, and if you could share a bit about what those collections are.
Yeah, thank you for being here with me. We have come a long way. I was an intern with Samir in 2016, so we made it. Yeah, but I'm happy to be here. Thank you to the CCDI crew for hosting us. It's been a good event. I'm always happy to be home. Yeah, so my project is called Sampling Black Life, Soundscapes and Critical Intention. And I'm sampling library collections to make soundscape compositions that think about how we might sample Black life more ethically and intentionally. I'm working primarily with 3 collections. Voices Remembering Slavery, which is they're audio interviews of formerly enslaved folks recorded in the 1930s and 1940s across the South. And there's one as far north as Baltimore. I'm working with Now What a Time, which is the Fort Valley Folk Festival from 1938 to 1943. So this is primarily blues songs and gospel songs, some gospel quartet work recorded there in Georgia. And then I'm also working with Chicago Ethnic Arts, which is a huge collection created in 1977. The Illinois Arts Commission worked with the American Folklife Center and contracted a bunch of folklorists to go out into Chicago and to survey ethnic art. So they talked to everybody. They talked to the Italians, the Germans, the Polish, the Greek, and they talked to a bunch of Black people too. And so I'm working with just the gospel and blues aspects of those collections. And I chose those 3 because in part they offer a wide range of ways to listen to Black life. Like the Now at a Time is primarily just songs. There's no interviews, but then Voices Remembering Slavery offers a wide range of interviews. And then Chicago Ethnic Arts offers a little bit of both. There are some interviews, there's some conversations, some panels, some songs, but not like songs recorded just for the library, but like folks recording in blues clubs or folks recording in churches or things like that. So they offer me a wide range of things to sort of listen to and pick from as I'm trying to think about how we might sample better.
Yeah, I wonder if you could talk about that last part, the sampling, and in particular your methodology, your approach to doing this work, which I think is pretty unique and dynamic. So could you share with us sort of the origins of your approach to doing this work, how the work that you've been doing here extends also the work that you had done prior, to hear a bit about just your approach and how you're working with these materials?
Yeah, so this is not work I would have ever said I was going to be doing. Like if you had asked me 3 years ago, 4 years ago, are you an artist? I would have said no. I would have said absolutely not. The academy sort of takes these things out of you. So, during grad school, I was being trained to be an academic, and we write, and that's what we do. But I also work in sound, and so I'm always pushing at form, because when we're thinking about sound and we're thinking about listening to Black life, text is just not going to cut it all the time. And so when I was doing work with you, listening to gentrification in Washington, D.C., I started to make a lot of soundscape recordings. And so this is kind of where this work started, was me building my own kind of collection of soundscape recordings. So this is where I was like, what does gentrification sound like? How do we listen to gentrification? And had the bright idea to put recorders on top of buildings to listen to gentrification. I took the question quite literally at the beginning. I was like, if I go to 7th and Florida, you all know where 7th and Florida is? Okay.
Go ahead and explain.
So if you're not from DC, 7th Street and Florida Avenue, the corner of 7th Street and Florida Avenue has a very, very famous cell phone store, Metro PCS store called Central Communications. And they play go-go music out of that store from about 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day.
And maybe explain what go-go music is as well.
So go-go music is DC's local subgenre of funk music. It came up late 60s, early 70s with bands like Chuck Brown and the Soul Searchers, like Air Raid, like Trouble Funk. A lot of people thought that go-go was gonna, be bigger than hip-hop. But that didn't quite happen. But go-go's still going strong. It's fine. But because they were like, this hip-hop thing is not going to last. Like, what are y'all doing? What are y'all rapping about? Go-go, like, you put 12 people on a band, it crank. Like, they were like, this is the future. So I chose that intersection because I said, if I can hear gentrification anywhere, I can hear it at this intersection. Because we're listening to Black life. We're listening to Shaw Change. And so I had 2 recorders, and I put them on top of buildings in and around that intersection to listen to gentrification. So this is where I really started listening to sirens, to car horns, to the beep of the Metro bus when the brakes hit. Like, this is where I really started to think about, maybe I don't study Black music, maybe I study Black sound. And so this is where that work started in DC. But I was doing that work, and then it was the Folklife Festival. The Folklife Festival commissioned me to make a film about a soundscape in Ward 1. They commissioned 8 artists, DC has 8 wards, to do 60-second films about the sound in those spaces, and they commissioned me to do Ward 1 because that's where the Metro PCS store is. And so I made a spectrogram film with those soundscapes. And so I think that's kind of where we started with this idea that with these sounds that I was either collecting or in the library's case, just sort of working with previously established collections, that I could make something new, that we could listen to and listen with. And so in terms of methodology, I I take a collection that I've either made or that already exists, and first I just listen to it. There's no sort of manipulation yet, but I just listen to and listen through that collection, and there are always moments that stick out to me that feel like they need more context, or that maybe there's something I'm struggling with, maybe there's some tension in the collection that maybe I don't agree with this part, or maybe I'm like, what is going on? There's a lot of racist stuff in the collections. We both know this now. And then I start to sort of breathe into that collection. Maybe I collage with a recording that I've made. Maybe it's a contemporary recording. Maybe it's some music that I've made. I am, I guess, a musician again. I thought I had left that behind. I was a violinist for a million years, and then I said, no more. And here I go. So I use whatever I have at my disposal to kind of like speak to whatever that moment is, and in such a way that I'm thinking slowly and not just with whatever I need, but whatever feels intentional and whatever I can justify to the communities that I would hold myself accountable to.
One of the things that you had shared with me was a comment that you had come across in your research by a gentleman named Jim Mack, Mr. Jim Mack, who was a musician, composer, producer, and he said something really powerful and profound about where he thought the collections, himself as an interviewee and a community member, where he thought the collections should live. Could you share with us what he said and how you have tried to reckon with the kind of the politics of where these collections live and are used today?
Yeah, so Jim Mack is part of the, is featured in the Chicago Ethnic Arts Collection. It's in 1977. He was interviewed by Ralph Metcalf Jr. And he was asked about, well, what do you think about, you know, these collections? What do you think about this work that we're doing? We're coming to your community and interviewing you all. And he said these collections should not be in the Library of Congress. He says that very specifically. He says they should not be in the Library of Congress. They should not be at the Harold Washington Library downtown. They should not be in Rome somewhere. That was the exact quote. He says that they should be in the spaces that they were made in. So in this case, it would be on the south side of Chicago. And that it's difficult to grasp the idiom that we're speaking of when you're lunching at the Waldorf Astoria. And I just, when I heard that, it would just really like popped out to me, because there's a tension there in that somebody is saying, do not put this in the Library of Congress. And the only reason I have access to it is because it is in the Library of Congress. And I didn't want to shy away from that tension. Because, you know, I mean, the Chicago Ethnic Arts is huge. It's a lot of stuff left on the cutting room floor, like a lot. But I wanted to sit in that tension a little bit and to think about, okay, well, somebody did not want this here, but because it's here, I'm here. And because it's here, I'm in Chicago. Because it's here, I'm working with and listening to Black people in Chicago. And so how do I sort of sit in that? And so the soundscape composition that I made for Chicago, it starts with that quote, because I was like, I'm not going to run away from it. I want to acknowledge that these tensions exist between institution and community. But then because I thought it was funny, I went to lunch at the Waldorf Astoria in Chicago. And so that quote splices into me getting off the elevator at the Waldorf Astoria, because I thought it was cool.
I'm wondering, I mean, that's a great example of what I'm going to ask, but I'm also wondering kind of what has struck you most or left you most inspired or transformed or changed from the collections and communities that you've been working in and with and for?
Yeah, so partly because I just came back from Chicago, so this work, especially these two collections that are based in particular places, I just spent 3 weeks in Chicago, sort of following up on the collections, and I'll be headed to Fort Valley later this summer to be there. So for Chicago, I intentionally set out to make 5 soundscape compositions per collection, so 15 total. They're short. They're like 2 minutes each-ish. But in Chicago, I ended up making a suite of compositions that work together, because the thing that struck me most was the work of a folklorist named Beverly Robinson. So Beverly Robinson was one of the 2 Black folklorists that worked on Chicago Ethnic Arts. And listening to her work was so transformative, because the way she spoke to these people, the way she worked with these people, the way she was in community with these people really reminded me of what Black folklore can do, because I come out of the folklore department at Indiana University. And sometimes I forget about what folklore can do, but listening to her work in 1977 was really transformative. And so I ended up making a suite for Beverly Robinson. And so all of the moments that I pulled out were moments where she was doing something that was either, it was some combination of like profound and mundane at the same time. Just her being so human with these people, whereas compared to the interviews on Voices Remembering Slavery, I mean, in my earlier office hours with the library, we spent a lot of time talking about how I'm trying to haunt the interviewers because they're awful. And so that's what I'm doing in those soundscape compositions, is trying to bring back shame for them. And so then for Chicago to listen to Beverly work was just really inspiring and really transformative. And so I composed a thing for her.
That's beautiful. You mentioned you just had a listening session in Chicago, and so can you talk about the work that you're doing to, in a sense, reunite or re-engage the very same communities where these collections were first collected or gathered from? What the idea is behind that, what your process is, but then also tell us a little bit about how that first listening session went.
Yeah, so I'm having 3 listening sessions this summer. First one was in Chicago, second one's here tomorrow. And then the last one will be in Fort Valley in August. And the idea is that I'm not making these so that they can live in the academy somewhere. I mean, I'm really like, when we talk about the Ivory Tower, like I live in New Hampshire, so it's just a particular place to be. But really wanting for my work to start a conversation with these communities about these collections. And so I had a listening session in the south side of Chicago, not far from where Beverly was doing all of her work. And I had folks there that I knew. I had folks from Chicago in that space listening with me and like asking questions. And, somebody said, well, is this sound from the Jewels from the grocery store? And I said, well, no. But, they really were like identifying with this. And then I was really happy because there's one person that I met. His name is Pastor Donald Gay. He is on the 1977 collection, him and his sister, and he was at my listening session last week. And so spending time with him was like really transformative because I'm listening to him sing gospel, I'm listening to his sister be interviewed, and he came from a family of gospel music singers, and they've all passed except for him. And so I went to church with him because he's a pastor, and everybody was so welcoming, like, I mean, it was very much like, stand up, we know you're a visitor, like come up to the church and say what you're doing, like you're from the Library of Congress, like what are you doing, but like in a very loving way. But spoke with him about his mother, asked him to use a more contemporary sample of his voice. He said yes, and so I have a story in the collection about his mother praying from 1977, and I spliced it with a snippet of him talking about his mother praying in 2019, which was really powerful. And then he listened to it. And then he called me that night after the listening session and told me that I should teach gospel. He said, the Lord put this on my heart, and I want to call you and tell you. And I'm a guest in Chicago, right? Like, it's not like here. Here, okay. But I'm just like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll teach gospel music at Dartmouth College. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. But it was really powerful to be able to meet him and spend time with him, and the fact that he showed up. Like, yeah.
And how did Chicago respond? In addition to Pastor Gay, like, what was the response to the listening session?
People were very affirming. Doing this kind of composition for me is strange because my PhD is not in composition, and like I wasn't doing this sort of actively and intentionally and out loud 4 years ago. I've always been like doing a little bit, and I grew up as a musician, but so having people affirm the work that I've been making in their city, in their neighborhood, has been really helpful for me to be like, yes, I'm on the right track, and I'm gonna keep doing this. But folks had a lot of questions. Folks were very affirming. People were like, where are you doing this next? Like, they wanted to look more into my work. They wanted to look more into the work of Beverly Robinson. Like, it very much did what I wanted it to do in terms of starting this conversation.
That's great to hear. I'm wondering if you could share, so this work is in progress, and so I'm wondering if you could share a bit about, I guess, as we close and open for Q&A, where do you see this work heading next? Kind of what are your next steps in the process? If you could share a bit about that with us.
Yeah, I mean, in the immediate, there's just a lot more composing to do. I would say I've made about half of what I want to make right now. I have a lot more violin to play, which scares me. But a lot of the things need violin, and I didn't put two and two together that I was in an apartment in Chicago, and I just wasn't going to be able to be like playing violin. But then in the future, I think this needs more writing, because all of the threads that I'm pulling together in these short compositions, like, people want to know these stories, and I should write them down and thread them together, because I realize that I make a lot of decisions sonically that don't necessarily come through, and I'm happy to like talk about them in listening sessions like this, but at some point I will be an academic and write this down.
I guess one final question is maybe just if you could share with us how you would love to see this work live on. Like, what do you imagine the afterlife of this work may be, or what would you like it to be?
One thing, well, my final deliverable for the library is a website where you can go through all the compositions and see every layer. But the fact that the two junior fellows, I don't know if they're here, are doing soundscape compositions because of me is wild. Because so the fact that people are here at the library doing this work and now we're all just listening together is very cool. And so if we could do more of that, that would be dope.
Awesome. I want to kick it off with a question. Something I think of often lately, because I just read the work, is Dr. Matthew Morrison's concept of black sound as a manifestation of sonic blackface. And I'm wondering, how does that interplay with your work as you're going through the archives?
I love Matthew Morrison's work. I really do. In terms of black sound studies, like, he's there. And I think he reminds us that so much of what we think blackness sounds like has been taught to us. And so I have to be very open in terms of listening to these people, whether it be in the archive or in Chicago or wherever I am, and not telling them how they sound, but them telling me how they sound. There's an interview in Voices Remembering Slavery, and the man is telling the most beautiful, heartbreaking story, and there's a car horn that comes through. And in my head, I'm like, what year is this? There's a car horn coming through this interview, right? But like, I didn't take it out. It's not for me to say that I need there to be no car horn in this story about slavery, because those two things like throw us off. How are you talking about being enslaved and there's, and it's giving me city? But that's not for me to say. That's how far this afterlife stretches. This man was 101 years old, and he's in Baltimore. You can hear a car horn in the back. That happened.
Yeah.
And so in terms of the sonic manipulation, it's not for me to take out. And so I try to just let people tell me who they are. Yeah.
Very important. I wanted to bring it to the audience. Are there any questions in the audience? Oh, yes.
So is there a way for you to articulate what gentrification sounds like, or is it specific to a location?
Wait, I'm going to repeat the question before you answer because he doesn't have a mic. And the question is, are there ways to articulate what gentrification sounds like in your work?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to articulate what gentrification sounds like. The way that I talk about it is that what gentrification sounds like is not actually the right question, because gentrification doesn't sound like anything to anyone in a vacuum. It's like, what does gentrification sound like to whom and where? So for me, I'm particularly interested in what gentrification sounds like to Black people in this city. Some things get louder, some things get softer. Some things become more criminalized. It really just depends on what aspect you're looking at, from noise legislation to go-go to, you know, the sounds of construction and sirens. It really just depends. But in overall, I would say that during processes of gentrification, some people are amplified and others are silenced.
And I want to piggyback off that. You know, there's this common belief that gentrification sounds like silence. And you would say it's locational more than it is that general idea of silence.
Can we just mention that article from The Atlantic, just real quick? Because it was 2 years ago, and everybody was sending it to me. It was like, oh my God. I was like, yes. And I read it, and I was like, okay. And then The Atlantic just reposted it like a week ago, and now it's like, oh my God. Yes, gentrification does involve people coming into a neighborhood and having different expectations of what a reasonable level of sound is. Yes. But the majority of my work is designed to stop thinking about gentrification in a two-dimensional way. Gentrification is not white people moving in, black people moving out. When those bars come, places get louder.
Yeah.
When those people come and park their cars on the side of the streets, neighborhoods get way louder. So with amenities, with the Whole Foods, it actually gets a lot louder. But that wouldn't fit the idea of what we think black people sound like. Because there's some older black people that's lived in DC for 67 years, and they just sit down and be quiet. But that wouldn't actually make sense to us because we only understand blackness as loud, as noisy, as dangerous. And so a lot of my work is being like, yes, and can we hold all of it?
Come on.
I'm not going. It's just because that article came back around, so
Yes.
I'm a chill though.
We appreciate your care, and thank you so much. We're going to have a 5-minute break, but before we do, can we give another round of applause? We'll be back after 5 minutes. Thank you.
Welcome back from the break. And thank you all again for joining us for CCDI Summer Fuse 2024. My name is Olivia Dorsey. I'm a program specialist on the CCDI team. In my role, I work with our award recipients, troubleshooting challenges, and providing them with resources and guidance for completing their projects. I have the pleasure of introducing CCDI's 2024 Libraries, Archives, Museums Award recipients. First, we'll hear from DC Public Library, then Friends of Tierras Pueblo, and last but not least, Hoboken Public Library. They've been working on their project since December 2023, and their work will conclude this December. After their presentations, there will be an opportunity for them to take questions from the audience. For our virtual audience, please feel free to enter any questions you may have in the Q&A feature of Zoom. And for our in-person audience, as a reminder, if you have questions, please feel free to come up to the mics in the aisles here for your questions. And at this time, I'll go ahead and pass it on to DC Public Library.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maya Thompson, and I am the Library Program Coordinator for the People's Archive at DC Public Library. The People's Archive is DC Public Library's local history center that collects personal and organizational records documenting the social, political, and cultural life of Washington, D.C. Our grant project is titled Documenting the Ethiopian Communities of D.C. So, our full project team is made up of myself, Sade Makonnen, as our principal artist and curator, and Tana G. Johannes as oral history interviewer. We also have Aisha N. White as project manager and community impact consultant, and Galila Casa, who will work on transcription and translation. So, in this presentation, we will go over the background and inspiration for this project, an overview of the project and its goals, some challenges we have faced, and the project's future. So for a little background, Ethiopia is an East African country located in the Horn of Africa. It is the second most populous nation in Africa after Nigeria, and it encompasses numerous ethnic groups and languages. Religions practiced in the country include Ethiopian Coptic Orthodox Christianity, Islam, among many others. In the 1970s, the Ethiopian Revolution led Ethiopians to begin to migrate in large numbers to Washington, D.C. This corresponded with the era that Black residents made up the majority of the city, an era that lasted from the late 1950s to 2011. D.C. is now widely considered to be home to the second largest population of Ethiopian people in the world after Ethiopia itself. The city has undeniably been shaped by its Ethiopian residents, just as it has shaped them. Using materials in the Library of Congress collections, the People's Archive aims to highlight the stories of DC's Ethiopian communities, which remain largely underrepresented in our collections. We hope to build relationships with DC's thriving diasporic communities, explore the symbiotic relationship between DC and its residents with geographic ties to Ethiopia, highlight the experiences of DC residents whose relationships to the city and Ethiopia span multiple generations and identities, and use Library of Congress collections as a prompt for the community to continue to build the archive. We will embark on this work in 3 parts: the collection of oral histories, a series of 3 community convenings, and a digital platform to compile and share materials. This project uses the Elena Bradunas collection of photographs and interviews as its starting point. The collection, housed in the American Folklife Center, consists of almost 400 images and recordings of DC's Ethiopian community. The collection features cultural and historic landmarks, Howard University and All Souls Church. But the collection does have its limitations. It represents an outsider ethnographic perspective. The materials also depict just a few instances of life for Ethiopian people in DC in the 1980s. We are so eager to expand upon the stories Bradunas began to collect to include more community voices and stories. And now I will hand it over to my collaborators to talk about the oral history part of this collection.
Stay here. All right. Yeah. So we, as part of the project, one of the things that we've been looking forward to is continuing to expand on our histories of music and arts and what that means in terms of our community here in this space. And as part of that, Zede has already spoken with Kumara Zacharias, who's one of the local artists who's just incredible.
Yeah, Kumara, who's actually in Cambridge now, but is a music ethnologist. I think I said that right, but he used to be really deeply immersed in the music scene here in DC. He had his own band called Kino Musica, which was kind of like Afrofusion, like yes, Ethiopian music, but then also like heavily influenced by Afro-Latinx music. Kumeda also is like really deeply like rooted and involved in the Dominican community here and Afro-Colombian in the DC area. So, but yeah, it was fun to have him kick it off because I know like he knows also like the DC night scene, which we've talked about has also like many Ethiopians. Like if you knew DC Live back in the day, that was owned by my uncle and his friends, Republic Gardens, like just the nightlife, also Twins Jazz on U Street, either were owned by Ethiopians or many Ethiopians would go there. So it was nice to have Kumeda kind of highlight all of these really iconic DC and specifically Black spaces that he either performed at or saw musicians perform at, and then like in places where like you would have go-go bands, African diaspora bands, Ethiopian jazz bands, all of them in one place playing for a night. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in keeping with that, we are also really excited about talking with folks in the food space and thinking about how Ethiopian food in DC and in the United States, as shaped by what is happening in DC, is such a vibrant part of the communities we've grown up in, but also of thinking about ways that Ethiopianness and Black Americanness come together culturally, whether it's on a plate or in music spaces as well.
Right. And it's really important to highlight that the reason why DC became the second largest community outside of Ethiopia was because of how Black DC was, and many Ethiopians who migrated here in the 60s and 70s mentioned that, like, this felt like home. They felt welcomed. They felt safe, which is really important.
And we will also be in conversation with the K. Shalome Ethiopian Music Collection, which is housed in the American Folk Life Center as well. And do you want to talk about the community convenings?
Sure. They're still being kind of planned, but loosely, we're hoping to have 3 events. One to kind of launch this archival oral history that we're building out will be at the MLK Library location, and hopefully we'll have on Comics, which is a Ethiopian American comic book series. They're based in Texas, but a lot of their superheroes are from the DMV, like grew up in Silver Spring, has aunties who owns shops in DC kind of thing. So we're hoping to bring them because it's really, for us, it's really important to make this as intergenerational as possible so that, like, the younger generations that are coming up here also feel not only included, but like take ownership on this archive. We're gonna have like a DJ Kameda, who DJs all over DC, is very well known. Hopefully we'll do a rooftop series. We're thinking of hiring Ross Band for another event, which is an Ethiopian jazz band that, like, any famous Ethiopian artist who comes here, musician, always hires them. And then like a maybe one day exhibition pop-up that will include, like, presenting this oral history archive to the community, and hopefully we will have, like, elements of the like the K. Shalome's music collection that's here at the Library of Congress, potentially playing, like, as an audio piece, but we'll see.
So to ensure that the project is accessible and has a presence beyond the physical archive, we also plan to digitally document. So we're still exploring options for this part of the project's digital life. We are considering a story map or a more simple blog, but for sure the oral histories will be published on DigDC, which is the People's Archives online repository. So this project has not been without challenges. Before getting to the deeper work of the grant, we have had to navigate local government bureaucracy to be able to use our funds. We're also turning to our library foundation to cover the cost of things that are not covered by the grant. So that has also taken time. So our timeline for the project has changed. And there are also a lot of cultural things that we have to navigate as well.
That, Hanna, I think you can speak really well on.
Yeah, I think one of the things we were talking about earlier is that part of our work is figuring out how to document conflict, right? When we think about the term Ethiopian American, both of the descriptors on either side of that are fraught, come from histories of violence and border negotiation that have really affected people's lives, and it's not a neat identifier for so many of the people we're going to be speaking with. So we've talked a lot about how to capture that in individual stories, snapshots, without trying to assign from our own perspective sort of a tidy narrative to all of it.
So despite our challenges, we are very energized by the research we have done thus far. We found a wealth of materials in the African and Middle Eastern reading room. For our March visit, area specialists of Ethiopian and Eritrean collections, FINTA, curated a display of periodicals, art, and centuries-old texts that will provide context for our project. By making ties to the Library of Congress collections, both modern and centuries old, we hope to motivate the local community to seek out the library's holdings on Ethiopian and Eritrean history. And there is so much more for us to research. We hope to find more materials that reflect connections between Ethiopia and Black America as experienced in DC. So this is a document announcing W.E.B. Du Bois's pageant, The Star of Ethiopia, where Ethiopia is a symbol of Blackness, and this is from the Rare Book and Special Collections Division. We also found a document of Mary Church Terrells, DC educator and activist, and she expressed her empathy with Haile Selassie and Ethiopia in the Ethiopian and Italian conflict, a sentiment many Black Americans shared, and this is in the Library of Congress Manuscripts Division. So our ultimate goal for this project is to update the archive and establish an infrastructure for the broader community to continue to publicly document these complex narratives. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your interest in the 2024 CCDI Summer Fuse. As project director for the Tiwa, Ancestral Tiwa World Connected to the Present, Tijeras Pueblo in Context, I welcome this opportunity to thank the Library of Congress and the Mellon Foundation for the opportunity to work on this project. The amazing Library of Congress staff deserve special mention for their infinite patience and assistance with the project. The Tijeras Pueblo archaeological site was the 14th century home for one of many Tiwa communities in the central Rio Grande Valley in New Mexico and the adjacent mountains to the east. It's considered an ancestral site by the pueblos of Isleta and Sandia, both of which are still populated today. The site is protected and maintained by the USDA Forest Service and a partner organization, the Friends of Tijeras Pueblo, the awardee for this project. Today, the site includes a self-guided trail with interpretive signage, gardens, and landscape with native plants, and a small museum. For more than a decade, the Pueblo of Isleta has been consulted for all signage and exhibits and is an essential collaborator for this project. This picture was taken after a very long recording session with the elders from the Department of Cultural and Historic Preservation at the Pueblo of Isleta. As we work toward bringing our museum into the 21st century, we have three museum projects that are made possible by the grant. In response to our question to the Isleta elders, what would you like to have our non-native visitors know about the Pueblo people? They answered that we are still here. So we're putting together a We Are Still Here digital zine in the form of a slideshow on a motion-activated digital photo frame. The zine will comprise a combination of 19th and 20th century images from the Library of Congress collections and present-day photographs. Both the Tijeras Pueblo Archaeological Site Museum and the Isleta Department of Cultural and Historic Preservation will have copies of the completed zine. Current exhibits in the museum, include 6 themed learning stations with interactive displays on archaeology and daily life in the ancestral Pueblo. One learning station features clothing and is supplemented with a full-size Pueblo looms installation. To enhance this exhibit, the grant is supplying a tablet screen with a video of a master Pueblo weaver weaving a belt on a similar loom and talking about Pueblo weaving. The video includes discussion of both upright and backstrap looms and will include Library of Congress images. Another very important feature of the museum is the mural map, painted by Deborah Jojola, Isleta Jaimez, and who is with us today. You'll hear from her in a few moments. Authentic and respectful interpretation of the mural is being facilitated by involving voices from Isleta elders from the Cultural Committee. A visitor will be provided with a tablet displaying a view of the mural map with highlighted areas that, when tapped, will bring up related information. For example, a visitor can see and hear an Isleta elder speaking in his Tiwa language about the water watcher shown on the map. English subtitles will enable the viewer to understand the story while hearing the native language. Library of Congress images will be included in the program. And now I'd like to introduce Deborah Jojola, who will talk about the meaning this project has had for her and her home Pueblo.
Greetings, everyone. I am Deborah Jojola, an artist and independent curator and researcher from the Pueblo of Isleta and Jemez, New Mexico. I have been involved with and dedicated my time to this mural project since November 2017. And I continue to see this project grow with the Tiwa history of my family, community, and future of our cultural heritage. Watching and listening to Isleta youth look at the Tiwa world map with much curiosity and seeing their imagination soar about who are they, where did they come from, the relationship with the land and the heritage of lifelong connection to place. Also, with my elders, cultural leaders, and the Isleta Department of Cultural and Historic Preservation has been and is very rewarding to me in many ways. Hearing my Tiwa language and history of the land is the utmost important to me as an artist. My work has become very purposeful in ways that create learning traditional knowledge, our history, and learning and hearing our voices as Indigenous people of the land and its environment. This mural map project has developed a dialogue and tool of knowledge of incredibly large landmass utilized by the Southern Tiwa people. And we were agricultures and caretakers of this inherent landscape through centuries. The involvement of elders and oral histories of the use of the land, the gift of individuals within our communities, and the important landmarks for spiritual journeys are all resurfaced as we look and see the Tiwa mural map. Sketches of many of our Tiwa places that no longer exist are being remembered within this map project. With the CCDI grant, we can add actual voices of our elders telling the story of water watchers, sky watchers, and trails once traveled by Tiwa hunters, salt gatherers, and spiritual leaders. Art was not a word, but was utilized as a meaningful rhythm of life and a process produced for purposeful times and reason. This is of great importance, that we reach back to learn from our ancestors of the past for the life in the present and for our future. Our knowledge is critical. Our struggles are real and still exist today. We reach back for guidance with prayers and offerings. With the breath of life, it carries a dialogue of history and resilience. and understanding of an environmental relationship that embraces all life. With hopes our children will carry on, practice, and understand for a better future. Herkim, thank you for all your support.
Hi, everybody. My name is James Cox. I'm the Special Collections Manager of Hoboken Public Library. And I'm going to tell you about our project, The Puerto Rican Experience in Hoboken and America. This is the agenda. I'm going to expound on this in the next 8 to 10 minutes. Here is our team as it currently stands. These are the people who work on the project regularly, but it is truly a whole library project. And everyone is involved in some way. There's approximately 50 employees at Hoboken Public Library. If it wasn't for my fellow librarians, I wouldn't be able to be off the desk and do research. So thank you to the entire Hoboken Public Library staff. Before I start talking about our project, I need to orient us. Hoboken is located in the northeastern portion of New Jersey in Hudson County on the western banks of the Hudson River opposite Manhattan. Hoboken has developed as a result of its proximity to New York City. Hoboken is probably best known as the birthplace of Frank Sinatra or Buddy Valastro, otherwise known as the Cake Boss. The intent of our project is to work directly and collaboratively with members of the Puerto Rican community to develop 2 publicly available electronic resources, a historic timeline and an online repository or museum. We will explore the Puerto Rican diaspora in Hoboken. We are primarily focused on the Great Migration, 1945 to 1975, but any information anyone wants to share, we will take. The goals of the project are to engage with a traditionally underserved community, develop a timeline of historic events, and develop a community repository or museum. The inspiration for this project arose from an exhibit at the Hoboken Historical Museum that explored arson fires in the 1970s and 80s that resulted in the displacement and, in some cases, death of primarily Puerto Rican residents. Between 50 and 60 people died as a result of arson fires, primarily women and children. This is sort of the opening salvo of the gentrification of Hoboken. During the mid-20th century, Puerto Ricans made up a large portion of the population. During the 1960s, 1 out of 4 residents in Hoboken was of Puerto Rican heritage, and during the 70s and 80s, Hoboken boasted the largest Puerto Rican community per capita on the continent. Having worked on this project for 6 months, it's clear it will proceed past the end of the award or grant. It's apparently a marathon, not a race. The way I see it now is it's a 2 to 3 year project and we're on year 1. Year 1 is research and production, and year 2 will be promotion, which will ideally result in more research and audience participation. The things we've done or are doing include abstracting Jersey Journal articles. The Jersey Journal is the local paper that covers the area and time period. It's also the historic record that we have to work from. This little news article right here is about the first Puerto Rican cop employed in Hoboken. The article is from 1968. There are lots of articles preceding it saying, like, we need somebody who works for the police who can speak Spanish. We've collected several artifacts. I'll show you those in a moment. Thus far, we've tried, whoa, I skipped something. Hold on just a minute. We've collected several artifacts. Yes, I skipped a page. We've conducted several interviews. We're working with the Puerto Rican Cultural Committee, or PRCC, as an outside interest group. We've contracted with an outside oral historian, the curator of the Fires exhibit, Christopher Lopez. He's conducting 10 oral interviews for us and composing family histories. And we've held 4 of 5 cultural events. We still need to build the Omeka site and timeline, conduct more interviews, visit some other repositories, and hold 1 of 5 cultural celebrations, which will ideally result in more interviews and artifacts. Some of the things I'm using or have it, well, I keep messing up my place here, people. Thus far, we've tried to engage with our target audience through direct engagement and indirect engagement. Direct engagement is where we've gone to sponsored events and met with people where they live. This has been coordinated with our community engagement department and our partners at the Hoboken Housing Authority. We've also engaged or tried to engage with our audience indirectly through email blast and newsletter prompts. This has been less successful. We've heard from people, but it's been a less successful way of interacting. This is an artifact somebody brought to us, and he explained that this is like a painting from the country people in Puerto Rico. I put no date, but it's from 1992, and I had to tell you that or I'd never sleep again. We're working as an historian. I've used Library of Congress materials for many years, primarily 18th and 19th century maps of New Jersey. So switching gears and interacting with a full breadth of materials related to a cultural group has been interesting but also humbling. The Library of Congress has so many resources. That said, I'm using the Library of Congress materials as a general framing device. The Library of Congress research guides give a good overview of the subject, and research we're doing in Hoboken is drilling down to the population-specific information. Some of the things I'm using or have access from the Library of Congress include primary documents such as maps and graphics, like this WPA image to the right. Our cohort lead suggested we use Ask a Librarian, and though I am a proud person, I've used Ask a Librarian several times now, and each time it has given me sources I wouldn't have otherwise found. And as per our original proposal, I used the National Jukebox. Participant response has been very good overall. We were invited to the 58th annual Puerto Rican flag raising ceremony this past Saturday, and there have been many enthusiastic people who have wanted to talk to us. As part of my research design, I had the idea that I would play Puerto Rican music from the National Jukebox, and that would allow me to find out something about the modern Puerto Rican population in Hoboken. You may not be able to see, but that track is from 1917 and is now 2024. So, we played Gloria Espinola at the first event, and these are some of the responses we received. And I will not read them out for you, but you can read them yourself. Frankly, it was the wrong environment, a party, to play something that old intermixed with newer tracks. The track is linked here so you can go back and listen to it at your leisure. Despite this egg on my face, it endeared me to many of the people who participated in this event, and when they see me now, they say, "Don't play that music again." So that leads me directly to challenges. My own ethnocentrism has been a problem. I consider myself an enlightened person, but I didn't consider language when planning this project. I was only thinking about English. And I'll pause for you to all sigh. Nor did I fully grasp the age of some of the materials and the relationship to modern populations. I had the best of intentions when planning to introduce modern populations to historic music, but my intentions were ultimately misguided or my execution flawed. Other challenges I've had include managing the vast holdings of the Library of Congress. I'm a completionist, and there's a great amount of material to survey and keep track of. The best way to reach our audience has been a bit of a challenge. In year 2 of this project, once I've completed our assets, I'll need to share them with our audience and other groups, and I foresee other problems or challenges as a result of that. Also, we've had some staff changes. Our train-loving archivist went to work at the Brooklyn Transit Museum earlier this year, but we've since hired some other people who are helping with the project. That said, I like to do research and I like to collaborate and see how projects evolve. And I think what we end up producing will be stronger because of the partnerships we've made and the lessons we've learned. This is how you can get in contact with me. I love to collaborate. Email me, call me, come to Hoboken, stop by and see me at the library. I can give you good advice on where to get sandwiches and coffee. Thank you to the Library of Congress and my CCDI colleagues.
All right.
Wow, can we give a round of applause to our 2024 Libraries, Archives, and Museums awardees? That was amazing. All right, so now we'll jump into the Q&A. As a reminder for our virtual folks, please feel free to drop your questions into the chat or the Q&A feature of Zoom. For our in-person folks, as a reminder, please feel free to jump up to the mics for any questions that you may have. I'll start out with a few questions here for you all. So each of you is exploring a wide array of materials from the library's collections, and we got to see some of those in your presentations. These range from the Ethnic Heritage and Language Schools in America Project collection, to the National Jukebox, to the vast holdings of the library's Prints and Photographs division for your projects. How did each of you determine which collections you wanted to use for your projects? I'm really interested in learning about what the research experience has been like, and if you found anything super exciting in your research process.
So I like maps. So previously, before I was a librarian, I did other work. I was a historian, and we would find maps and then write reports from maps. So maps, for me, are very helpful. It helps me to understand a culture and how an environment evolves over time. So previously, I would look at maps of New Jersey all the time. So seeing maps of Puerto Rico is very interesting. A lot of times maps evolve because of civil events. And in the case of Puerto Rico, a lot of maps were produced because of the Spanish-American War. So just the creation of that map alone as a result of a war is very interesting.
Thank you, James. Anyone else want to add to that?
I can add to that. So when I was trying to decide what I wanted to do this project on, I started with the holes in our own collection. So I immediately thought of the Ethiopian community and how there's really virtually nothing in our own archive. So when I went to the Library of Congress website and found this collection in the American Folk Life Center, I gasped because it was this 400 photograph collection of materials was so much larger than what we had, but it also, even though it was a lot, it also just birthed so many more questions for me. So I found that it was really generative in that way. And from there, I feel like we can just do so much with expanding on that and connecting with the community. So it's been a really interesting experience.
Add to that, when Maya approached me about this and showed me specifically like those images, and one of them being the Ethiopian Community Center in DC, like one of the things that we're doing, like me having been born here, I know a lot of these people. So like Hermela, who still runs the Ethiopian Community Center, she's run it for several decades, still is there, and she's like a friend of the family. So like we're hoping like to be able to interview those folks that can kind of like connect parallels, you know, to the collection that exists here, including the K. Shalome music one, like Mulatu Astatke is on that, and we're gonna see him tonight at Howard Theater. You know, like Mogas Hapte, he's been a musician in DC since the 70s, I believe, and he still performs out here. In April, he performed at Bosa, which is in Adams Morgan, like next to Madam's Organ and Trist, if anybody knows that location. So, you know, like it's really cool to see what, like, the past and how like the past is still very much in the present. And yeah, and then I want to shout out Fent Ahun or Fent Terune, who runs the Ethiopian and Eritrean collection here. It was my first time visiting it, but it was like, I think I'm also, you know, my main practice is I'm a visual artist, and I've been in major shows at the Met Museum, at Walters Art Museum, with like manuscripts that are like hundreds to thousands of years old, and my work being next to them, which is like really cool, but then also the discussion around like these really spiritual objects being behind vitrines and almost like held captive. So to see manuscripts and just objects from that era and books from, you know, as long ago as that Fenta pulled out and I was able to touch and handle was like such an amazing experience for me, for many reasons. So, and I think like I'm personally like trying to push more people in the DC area to come out. And he specifically said the Eritreans, they have an amazing collection here, and very few come out. And he speaks both Amharic and Tigrinya, which is huge. And yeah.
When I first started doing the research in the Library of Congress for our project, I expected to find a lot of images of just pueblos in general, but I was delighted and surprised to find a lot of images related specifically to the Pueblo of Isleta, which was particularly pertinent for us. So that was a wonderful part of my experience. But now that I'm here and I have the opportunity to do some more research, I'm looking forward to finding more. By the way, there were also not just images, but music recorded from the Pueblo of Isleta. So there was a lot of opportunity there for us.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I'm really curious to learn from all of you because, I mean, it's in the name for CCDI, right? Connecting Communities Digital Initiative. How do you envision your projects having a direct impact on your respective communities or elevating the history of your local communities?
May I start since I have the microphone?
Yeah, go for it.
I learned just last week something that I had dreamed of happening but wasn't sure it was possible, that the education department at the Pueblo of Isleta is considering making Tierras Pueblo visits part of the curriculum in their schools. Really delighted with this, that we can be a resource. That's what we have wanted, was to be a resource to the Pueblo of Isleta and to the Pueblo of Sandia. Early on, even before this project, we had approached the Pueblo of Sandia for information. They just don't have the staff and the resources to be involved with us. So their comment was that whatever Isleta says is fine. But I still want to try to find some material for the Pueblo of Sandia to relate more directly to our project.
Well, I'll just kind of piggyback that idea. Just having my community actually educate themselves on history that's not taught in schools or that nobody else will learn unless our elders and our people bring the attention to these young folks, you know, because with computers and technology, yes, it's always beneficial with collections and things of history that are stored, but not everything is there. Oral teachings of my people is not there. Language of my people is not there. But with new technologies and oral stories being videotaped, you know, they can hear it. They can hear the language. They can hear the histories. They can relate place to who they are. And I think that's very important with collections and museums, that they start having a genuine voice from the people that it comes from.
So my archive is called the People's Archive, and I feel that we have a deep responsibility to represent everyone who creates this city. So I'm really hoping that this project will bring more Ethiopian community members into our library and to really think about how their personal histories have really helped create this city, regardless of whether they are a notable person, like whatever their purpose or their place in the community is. Like, we care about everyone's stories. So I really want people in the community to know that their contribution is important, no matter how big and small, and that our archive really cares about them, and that we want them to be part of our community.
So the Puerto Rican community is not a monolith in Hoboken, but everyone I spoke to is very excited. They're ready to have their stories sort of elevated, and our ability to do that is something that they're very happy about.
Yeah, I'll just add really briefly to what Maya said, which was beautiful. One of the things we've talked a bit about is what it will mean for us to be able to offer folks models for having some of these conversations and documenting some of these histories on their own, whether that's in the library or bringing it as to the archive or just with their families to start asking questions about what their journeys into and through and in the city are and have been.
Thank you all. I'll take a moment to pause and see if we have any questions from our in-person audience or our virtual audience. All right, no questions. I have some questions. So, let's see. James, I'm really curious because you mentioned that your project, you see it as like the beginning, this first year being the beginning, and you see it continuing past the end of this grant. Could you tell us a little bit more about how this project connects with the wider goals and values of Hoboken Public Library? How do you see this project evolving in the future in those next couple of years?
So Hoboken Public Library, and maybe all public libraries, I'm not sure, seek to serve their populations. And so part of our population is of Puerto Rican heritage. And so I manage the special collections, and the special collections, in my opinion, sort of exist into the 19th and then the middle of the 20th century, and then sort of like there's dust bunnies or whatever. So I hope to modernize it and bring it into the future and say, well, what about all these other populations that have come here after, 19th century American or 19th century European immigration? So there's lots of avenues for us to explore and bring the library into the 21st century.
Wonderful. Judy and Deb, I have a question for you two. Could you tell us a little bit more about the significance of engaging Isleta elders deeply in your project?
I think it's a vital aspect to this project, because without our elders telling, like I mentioned before, the oral stories that are only told in, by maybe groups of people or societies within our communities, it's now can be, this dialogue is shared, and it's of ethnic value because it's told by them in their language. I think that is the most valuable aspect of what we're doing, and the young generation can utilize these recordings or these videotapes, and it's easy access to them because they know the technology, they know how to research and find what they want to listen to, and they can implement it in their schools or in their classrooms and with other members of their family. So I think the elders are very vital to keeping this history alive and keeping the legacy of who we are and how closely related we are to the landmass that we live in.
I think the comment of one of the elders sums up another aspect of it. Finally, we get to tell our story our way.
Absolutely. I have another question. This one is for DC Public Library. How are you hoping, or actually, no, not that question. So I know that you guys are conducting oral history interviews, right? What are you most looking forward to learning from these conversations with residents?
I can jump in real quick. I'm similarly to what Zede was talking about earlier. There's a lot about the city and a lot about this history that I have some sense of, or sort of some part of the story. So there are so many little things and backstories to things like the community center, backstories to things, especially in the nightlife space, especially in spaces that are part of Ethiopian and Ethiopian American experience and part of this area that folks are generally less inclined to talk about in public and sort of more cagey or more uncomfortable discussing for, if it's not seen as respectable or if it's not seen as the narrative that people want. I'm really looking forward to teasing that out with folks and giving people, especially those who are on the side of that is deemed less respectable, right? Having space to talk through that and what it means to challenge some of our national mythologies on either side, again, kind of that hyphen.
Yeah, what she said, that was really well said. I think also what's really important for us, and also I'm excited to see happen, is kind of like what you were touching on of like, there's so many types of Ethiopians, and there's also so many different ethnic groups, religions, spiritualities, it's infinite. And I think up until recently, there's been kind of like the monolith that you just said, like there's been one kind of storyline coming out of East Africa or in that particular region that represents all Ethiopians, and it's like really outdated and archaic and oftentimes not even correct. So we're hoping to like, from the different people that we're interviewing, that to change those narratives and bring in new ones that are not new, but will be new to a lot of people. Yeah.
It's so fantastic and inspiring to see from all of you, because like the theme that shines through for me is the ability to tell these stories from the people themselves, to be able to tell the stories in the way that they want, but also to say, this is what we want preserved, this is how we want to engage with others with our history as well. So thank you for this important work.
Thank you, Olivia.
And thank you all for joining us. At this time, we'll be taking a 10-minute break. After this point, we'll pick right back up where we left off, and we'll be getting started with our higher education awardees. So see you soon. Thank you.